Okay, thank you very much everybody for joining us for our final panel of the MCIT ICT Expo. It will be on urban ICT, urban service delivery. We have a very, very exciting list of panelists with us today. Most of you know some of these companies at least. You get services and products from them. Just a little bit of background to set the table for you before we introduce our panelists. So, what is the Ethiopia urban scene right now? Ethiopia's urban population is estimated to be somewhere around 17% of the entire country's population. So you're talking about 17 million people right now in the urban landscape in Ethiopia. Compare this with sub-Saharan Africa. That percentage is 37%. So the likelihood, or almost a certainty, is this number is going to accelerate very, very fast. It is estimated that Ethiopia's urban population will go from 16, 17 million right now to 42 million by 2035. Any business person will tell you that's an opportunity, not a problem. So from a policy side, that might be a problem. From a business side, this is an opportunity. So the previous panel we had was e-commerce. That really laid the foundations for some of the infrastructure that these companies will either use now or will use in the future as this area is being built. The ICT-enabled businesses in the urban landscape in Ethiopia are at their very, very nascent stage right now. So we're almost talking about potential, but we have some of the companies that over the last 2-3 years have started really penetrating the market and finding customer niches which have grown. So who can we compare them against? It's maybe an unfair comparison, but there are national comparisons that you can begin to look at. So let's look at 3 global companies. Amazon. It comes out about, I'm old enough to remember it pretty well, maybe a few people here, but it came on board about 1996 to the 1998 period. It had some serious issues that it had to accommodate, if you will. Number one, in the United States, internet penetration was very low. Sounds very familiar. The infrastructure wasn't as developed as most people would think for 1996, 98. Most people, if they wanted to order their Amazon product, let's say product right now, would have to wait till they go to work to get fast enough internet to order it. And they had one product. They started with books. And they expanded from there. So they really piloted, figured out what they were doing, and expanded to other products. Second business that has some similarities, obviously, to what we'll have today is Uber. It joined at a much later stage than an Amazon. The business model was very well developed. It accelerated very, very fast. Uber has over 5 billion individual rides that it has serviced in the 6 or 7 years it has been going on. It could not have done that if it started 1996, 1997, 1998. So when you look at the landscape of Ethiopia, I think you have to appreciate it takes time to build the ecosystem around this. And the last company we'll look at is something akin to, let's say, Monster.com. Very similar, started in about 2000. You're talking about very fast first mover advantages. 4 or 5 companies were very high on the list at the time. One company became first, took the market for about 6-7 years, and then other people were able to come in and create a more competitive environment. So you're not really here to hear me talk, so let me introduce our speakers today. In no particular order, first, Tamaskan Gabrehewit of ETA Ride Services. Second, Falag Sagai of Deliveratis. And third, Eskinder Mamo of Aharutech. We're going to try to be very rapid about this. I'm going to ask them a series of questions, then let them answer it, and then we'll turn it to the crowd. When we turn it to the audience, please mind that ask questions. They're going to be around for a few minutes afterwards, so if you want to talk personally with them, you'll have the time. If you want to give your story, but let's limit it to questions at that time. So first we'll start with Iskander, but 4 high-level questions for you. Number one, you're all entrepreneurs. You've started your businesses in the last 2-3 years. And all entrepreneurs are crazy. You come up with crazy ideas that other people wouldn't even think of, let alone give up everything you're doing, throw a lot of your savings into it and make it happen. So how did you come up with this idea? And what really motivated you to begin to scale it in the Ethiopia landscape? Number two, high level. It is an ICT conference, so what is a platform, ICT platform you're using? What are some of the technologies you're using at a fairly high level? Number three, what is your market? Is it high volume, mass market, lower volume, intermediate market? And where is your market when we're talking about 2035, when you anticipate the Ethiopia urban population begins to reach that threshold of 30, 40 plus million, if that is in fact the case? And lastly, I mean, it's a common theme in Ethiopia, but what are some of the infrastructure and regulatory challenges and the impact it has on your business? So, as concluded on that note, please give you 5 minutes each, and about 4.5 minutes, I'll give you a heads up.
What you said about entrepreneurs being crazy is very accurate. Someone said an entrepreneur is somebody like riding a lion. So everybody looking at the person thinks, what a courageous person. And the person on the lion thinks, how did I get on this lion and how do I get off this lion? So that's the challenge I think we're all dealing with. I had to take, so we have two arms of businesses. One is we provide software development services for different organizations. And the second thing, we have our own platform, a digital recruitment platform, which aims to effectively connect job seekers, job providers, and training institutions. And as a result, provide labor market information, which, for instance, policymakers can use to form policies. So how do we come up with the idea? I think that the first thing is having a job is the most important thing what you can have. If you have a decent paying job, you can afford healthcare, you can afford education, or maybe even relationships and everything comes having with a decent job. So from that perspective, that was interesting for us. But also looking at the population, the demographics of Ethiopia, when you have 70% are under 30 years old. I think by 2005 we're at 35 million people who are, who form the labor force. It's expected to grow to 82 million by 2030. So I think this is a huge market. So solving this issue was, very, very important. But the the motivating thing was for us to find qualified people who understand the technology, the tools, the methodologies we apply. That was really difficult. So we looked in other sectors, how can we solve this issue? So the impact on the business was pretty huge. So in our area, you have four main players. The job seekers who, they have high costs of finding a job, transportation, buying a newspaper. You have to travel a lot, even using mobile data, it's very huge. It's also the offers or job opportunities are location restricted. On the company side, it's really difficult to find qualified labor, those who have the technical and the soft skills, but also using offline solutions, using job boards or newspapers and so on. It's very expensive, it's very slow to get people, and it's very inefficient. For the training providers, they don't really understand what is the need of the industry. And for the government, they need data to be able to form policies, right? Or for the development partners to design interventions. So what we said is, so you have two ways to solve this. One is the traditional way of, building a business. That's how we actually started. So that's like you have on the one hand the consumer, on the other hand the producer. So you would initially, we design a product or service, and the product is manufactured, and hopefully the customer will come and buy the service or our product. And there's another way, which is the platform way, which is you have different types of users. It could be consumers, producers, or they can be both at the same time. And you can connect them both, and they could conduct interactions through the resources what the platform offers. So if we look at, you were talking about Amazon. So Amazon is the biggest retailer in the world, but they don't own one single shop. So they provide a platform. You can be at the same time a consumer who looks at different products and buys them, but you can also be a producer who sells your products and services there. So you have YouTube and all those different platforms, what you have. So for us, it was really important. In our case, our platform model is for the job seekers, they are enabled to build appropriate CVs, which are verified with verified experiences and qualifications from different institutions. And for the companies, they can send requests, which are defined by different keywords. And our system kind of filters and creates the appropriate matching. On top of that, we create this labor market information, which the government and development partners can use, again, to form their decisions. Currently, we're working with 3 industrial parks in cooperation with development partners such as enterprise partners, but also the government, the Ethiopian Investment Commission.
Great. So Deliveradis is an online restaurant delivery service here in Ethiopia. We started about 3 years ago, and our beginning was quite humble. Really, the only goal was I did not want to have to cook. That was it, right? It was a problem that I personally had. And there was only one restaurant near my house at the time, and I'd just gone there way too many times, and I just couldn't eat there again. So I said, okay, let me just hire a guy on a motorcycle, go place the order with the restaurant, call them up, and then have the driver bring it to me. And so that was the beginning of it. And I thought, well, maybe some other people have this challenge too. And so I remember put together like a very quick, really ugly looking website. It was password protected. I gave the code to maybe like 20 people. And so it's basically 2 people in the company now. It was me and a driver. And that was it. So there's 4 restaurants, and I remember sitting in the office really late at night, just, we get like maybe 1 order, and that was like a big thing for us, right? So I gave him like a little bag, and he went off, he took it, and he went to go pick it up, and he went to go deliver it and everything. And I realized, okay, this might be something that other people would like to use. And at the time, I was consulting for a company here, and I invited them to use the service as part of the 25 people that I had invited. And this was the first, they work in software day in, day out. They build software. And this was the first time, I think, for them that they had pressed a button on a website and something physically happened in real life, right? Usually they're used to clicking a button and then it's a success or error, and that's about it. That's all they really see. But having this ability to click on something online and have something physically appear in front of your eyes before you was something they hadn't seen yet. And they became my very first investors. And so since then, we've grown to about 30 people on payroll now. And we've definitely taken this in a direction that I never expected that it would go. And when he mentioned it's like getting on a lion and wondering, oh boy, did I really sign myself up for this? It's a very apt analogy. So just to go into a bit more about the ICT backbone, so this will be more technical. As of last week, we're now based on the Microsoft stack. We've used .NET Core, we use Node.js, we use a lot of JavaScript on the back end. Our market is primarily people like myself that just don't want to go out, or they just can't be bothered to cook. So a lot of them are expats, diaspora groups, offices, embassies, just a wide range of people that for whatever reason they just can't physically remove themselves from where they are at the present moment, or they don't want to, but they still have the need to eat. In terms of infrastructural challenges we faced, we've had the internet shut off on us several times, which for an e-commerce company is not great, right? That's where everything happens. We don't typically do phone orders. Everything goes through the website. So to be cut off is certainly a bit of a challenge. And the first time it happened, I remember, I was supposed to go to the US for like a week and a half for some weddings. This was the first time I really left the business since I started it. And I was very nervous because in this business, you have an hour or less, an hour at best, to solve any challenge that comes up. Because the goal is once you place an order through the website, you have it in your hands within an hour. That's the goal. There's not a lot of room for error in any of that. And so by stepping away, I'm basically removing myself from that problem-solving equation. So I said, okay, a week and a half, we can do this. And I spent 2 weeks before the flight making sure that everything that could have been taken care of was taken care of. All the bank managers knew that I was going to be gone. They had me on Viber. All the restaurants typically had me on Viber. Like, I cleared it with everyone. I was like, okay, I'm going to be able to relax on the flight. A a week and a half will be fine. Take off. And the cautionary sign should have been when I relaxed. Because when I landed in DC, I turned on my phone, internet shut off in Ethiopia, like it was just like the end of the world had just happened. And so I was like, you have to be kidding me, mid-flight? Like I thought I'd prepared for everything, but I did not prepare for that. And so I call the staff and everyone's panicking a little bit and I say, okay, let's just service all the motorcycles because we don't have enough time to do that anyways. And it's only a week and a half and we'll get back and we'll figure this out. So when I got back, we re-engineered our processes so they worked offline as well. And we grew even without the internet, month over month. We didn't, I think the beginning of when it happened when I was gone, we hit a dip, and the next month was higher than the month before when we had internet, right? And so it's possible to do e-commerce without the internet. It's not ideal, but there are challenges here that we're going to face, and I think through the thick of it for the most part, but I think if you wait for things to become perfect, it's going to be too late. And so, yeah, so I remember that was just one of the challenges we've had, in addition to just people not necessarily understanding what it is that we really do. So even for my own family members, the older ones, they thought I was absolutely crazy. They're like, online, food, delivery, motorbikes, what are you talking about? They had no idea. And some time went on and they just kind of left me to myself and just to do things on my own. And then I remember I got a call from one of my uncles. He's definitely on the older side, and he's like, you know what, I wanted to get a pizza. Is that something you can help with? And I was like, absolutely. This is the first time I could prove to my family that I was doing something worthwhile. So I remember I paid for the order myself. I just sent the driver to go get the food and bring it to him, and that's when it made sense. That's when it really made sense. So then he could communicate that to all of the other relatives that had no idea what I was doing and just thought I was absolutely mad. And I think from a regulatory perspective, that's something that we also need in this sector. Organizations like MCIT are the best positioned to kind of communicate what it is that we do to other stakeholders and other public sector organizations that are not as familiar with this technology. And so my hope is that we can have that liaison kind of relationship so that if we have to deal with, ERCA or the Ministry of Transport or so on, MCIT can be there to help facilitate that conversation and make sure that, we're communicating what we need appropriately and that we also understand where the other public sector organizations are coming from.
Well, so sorry that the panel is pushed a little bit to lunchtime, but we have delivery artists here, right? So no worries. So Ict Ethiopia Taxi was an idea that came up with maybe 6 years ago. I was in South Korea. I was doing my grad school in South Korea, and South Koreans tend to love Ethiopia a lot. They are really addicted to Ethiopia. They don't know a lot about geography, but if you ask any South Korean about Ethiopia, they remember something. So I asked the question, why don't you visit it then? And I checked out the data, and they're only 4% of our total tourism. Only 4% of Koreans come here. I asked them, why don't you come here? And they asked, because they travel a lot. They told me, transportation is a huge problem. We have to talk to cab drivers, beg them, we get robbed, so many sad stories. So I'm like, I was in a position of, I was doing my major in electrical electronics and communication. I said, why not develop an app that can solve this problem so that everything could be digitalized. Then the road of ITA started there. 2015, the first version of ITA was done and it was released. It was just in stores. But I was not physically here, so there was no one to start it. So I kept on refining the software and everything, and then when I moved here, I thought developing the software would be the most difficult because there's so many moving parts. There is a location, there's internet, there's so many things that are involved there. But the real challenge started when I moved here. It was extremely difficult. Like Felix said, it starts with your family. When you tell them, okay, I'm gonna do taxi company, like, what? All this education for that? It was difficult at first, but they have good trust in me, and then we started ITA. When we started ITA, when I came here and we started trying out the app, there were so many things we have to change, so many. Because in South Korea, it was a stable environment. The internet was good, everything was perfect. Like, we don't have to do nothing. The streets were named perfectly, it was easy, and it worked in South Korea. But coming here, we have so many challenges. And then we started grinding one by one. Payment itself was a huge challenge. One by one, now we are in our second year. We just passed our second year mark. And we have successfully accomplished around 80,000 rides, trips, and we have around 22 corporate clients that use our service monthly, and they're satisfied with that. We have, I think for the first time, managed a completely cashless payment system. We work with Dashen Bank and Fetan Technologies to achieve that. So we are here one by one. I mean, we tried. It was a struggle, but we're here. The technologies we've used, we have to change it multiple times based on how because if you've noticed, if there's anybody in tech area here, the dynamics are shifting right now. Script language is becoming more powerful than actual programming language, compiler seeker language. So what we've done right now is we're gonna re-release our app with the latest database system, the latest Node.js, AngularJS. We changed everything to JavaScript. For location, we have used our own little platform that combines the three, of course. So to get GPS, you only need three things. But the most difficult and challenging part was we've tried to work closely with the MCIT. We've worked closely with the FDA. We were the first movers in this business, so we had to discuss and provide studies on the meter fare of taxis as well in Ethiopia. And our research was very well accepted by the FDA. And we work closely with the Federal Transport Authority and the Ministry of Science and Communication Technology. And not only that, you see, this is all a company story, right? To make what ITA is ITA. But every company needs to have meaning. And that was a core value that I follow. Having meaning, for example, YouTube didn't want to be a website. YouTube want to enable people to use video, right? Google is trying to share information. So the meaning is sharing information, the basic meaning. So we wanted ITA to have information. And one of the things that we saw in this country is drinking and driving is causing a lot of accidents. And we work on that sector. So we wanted to completely stop that. So one of the things that we did is in 2009 Ethiopian calendar on the New Year's, we provided free rides for everybody that used the app after hours. So that's the story of ITA.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Just one quick follow-up question, I think, to our last two speakers, Fadlag and Temaskin. So I think one of the things we got, the storyline from Eskinder is you're able to leverage existing opportunities or existing infrastructure, existing business models somewhere else. So in his example he'd given it, explained it, the Amazon example. How do you kind of do that? I think I'm a little bit familiar with their business models, but how many kind of contractors do you have out there vis-a-vis employees, and how does that kind of work?
Yeah, so that was probably one of the toughest parts of the business to solve, was just the labor model, right? This was the first time for many motorbike drivers to do anything like this. Most motorbike drivers haven't really seen Addis on a map before. Most people don't really use maps here. And so one of the key things that we have to figure out is how do we find people, right? If we're spending time trying to figure out, okay, we got to go here and there and there and there, take a left at this sign, it's going to take too long for delivery. And so we had to build a training program for our contractors, for our drivers, just designed around GPS location. And it's not like turn by turn where the GPS tells you turn left, turn right here. We would give them a pin on the map, and we would track them and see how long it took for them to get there and see how they're orienting themselves in relation to that map pin. So from an infrastructure perspective and from just trying to figure out how we even train the drivers in the first place, getting that core group of drivers was the most crucial thing that we had to do. Because from there, those drivers that understand the vision or the model of the company can then communicate that to the other drivers. And drivers will sometimes see kind of like a hierarchy in management versus them, even though that's something we don't really encourage at all. But when they saw that other drivers had adopted this, had understood it, and were there to help them, that changed the dynamic a bit. But getting that core group of drivers was probably the most challenging. And we had definitely a few times where we had to kind of almost start from scratch. And I was the one doing the deliveries during those times. But yeah, I think leveraging the core group of employees that you have that recognize your vision and that subscribe to your vision is extremely important. So for any startup, getting that group of employees that embodies truly the mission of what you're trying to accomplish cannot be understated. The importance of that cannot be understated.
I agree with Falak. The infrastructure problems is it's obvious, it's here. But when you have a lot of pieces that is moving in one company, you don't own the cabs, you partner up with the cabs. You don't own, of course, you only have clients. And then connecting these people using basically internet as your baseline is difficult. Because as you know, everybody needs a 3G connection or a 4G for that to happen. And all this works. The whole equation needs, the driver needs to have a good internet connection. The user needs to have a good internet connection for them to align. And the bank needs to have a good internet connection. So there's so many moving things here. And a delay in one creates a problem on the other one. And one of the most difficult things that we faced in ITA is actually training the drivers on, because when you train a person that have never used a smartphone, how to use a smartphone and the internet, they think it's magic and there is no delay. A delay happens. That creates huge problem. So we had to do continuous non-stop trainings, non-stop building ups. And we even created in our ITA app, we have a call dispatcher option. And we added that call dispatcher option just because of the internet problem in Ethiopia. So that, you know, if you want to hail a cab, so basically how it works is if you hail a cab, whatever cab you choose, it have to send all that information to the server. From the server, it have to find the nearest driver, send it to the driver, right? If there's an internet mock-up there, it's a problem. So what we did is we added a call dispatcher button. If you press that, automatically it will send your information and everything to the call center, and they will automatically dispatch a cab for you. So basically the infrastructure problem, the basic infrastructure problem, so what I see here is, for us especially, is the street names, the internet, because you know it says Lesotho Road. No driver will ever understand where Lesotho Road is. That's very difficult. It's a huge challenge for us. And we have a lot of corporate clients, so we work with foreigners a lot, and they 100% expected, how come you don't know Lesotho Road? We face that challenge all the time. So basically, the internet connection and the street naming is extremely a huge challenge for us. And the one thing I want to add up to what Falak said, we want the MCIT to actually be in the middle for us to talk to other government offices that are involved in our business.
Excellent. Thank you. At this time, if anybody has any questions, I think we'd like to field a few here. Does somebody grab the mic here from the back? Any questions? Three. Please lift it.
Okay, so for those who are in the youth coming up, especially Ethiopians who are diaspora, myself from America, do any of you have recommendations for what you would, you could say, what kind of businesses or what other kind of partners you would like to see solving certain problems that might actually help your existing businesses so that we can know, and myself here, what would be best, you know, while we're in these other countries, what kind of knowledge can we bring, what kind of things can we start that would best help the majority of people, especially start something that can employ many young people. As we know, half the population is under 18. So, and using technology so we don't go, you know, in an old school way, but to do it very efficiently.
Thank you very much. My question is for the ETA and deliveries. It seems that this mapping and locating places is one of the most important solutions required in Addis Ababa. If you go to the government, they use another name, and especially some of them are marked with numbers, and the society uses landmarks and references and well-known people and buildings. And African nations have their own names. So there is a lot of disconnect in the naming of a particular place. So I was wondering if this is a very big problem for you, and I would assume it's the same thing for DHL or other courier services. Can you come up with maybe a common platform or a project, or I don't know what, to work with the government to make this thing solve it as early as possible before you change your system of doing this, because before you lose a lot of money. I heard about this last year, and this year we are talking about the same. And do you see any possibility to work close with the government, who has the legitimate power, I have to reinforce here, a legitimate power to name streets and addresses? For example, from Seva, if you want to order food, or if you want to send somebody to Seva, there are lots of names. It can be ex-massage house, or Gale Gale bed, or it can be a street, or anything can be done. But the problem is when those businesses relocate, that name stays there. So I really wonder how you can work together with the government to come up with this permanent solution for, at least for the city of Addis Ababa.
That is right in front.
Hello. I'd like all three of the panelists to actually take this question. So you have the privilege of having the regulator here, the head of e-governance, and the legal department of MCIT. So I want each one of you to say, what is it, that one magic wand that you would want them to do to help fix this for you? So thank you.
And let's take one last question right there.
Thank you. I just want to ask, how do you measure your success? And where will you be in 5 years? Because what I hear from the audience is, and of course from the panelists, that there is a problem with the internet, road naming, obviously struggling to train staff of yours to get them where your service to be delivered, and then of course communicating. I think I need to know, how do you measure your success? Is it just done for the sake of money? Any other benefits that you get? What's your opinion on that? Thank you.
So let me just kind of summarize the questions for you, and let's start with Tamaskin. So the first question we received was for Tamaskin and Zakat, is the addressing issue versus the local naming issue. And to speak at a high level about it, I think we can marry that same question to Hohota's question, maybe. And if you can answer a silver bullet question you could ask, and I think you've really expressed an eagerness to work with government broadly and the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology specifically. So if there's a silver bullet question, you could ask to them here. So that's the first question. The second one would be, what kind of knowledge can we bring from abroad? What kind of best practices can we bring and apply to this market? And the third is, how do you measure success? And I think maybe a way we can look at that is the developmental side of it, addressing and things, and there's some bottom line and market penetration and market growth kinds of issues, right?
Okay. So the recommendations would be, you see, as a company, of course, making a difference and a meaning is our priority goal. But if there's problems to achieve that, for example, the naming problem is a huge problem for us, the maps problem. What we did is we found our own solution. What we do is we just collect some positions and we just name them. So on the app, when you see, they can transverse to that. But this is a solution for us. We have more than 8 apps that we're releasing very soon. But for us, I was very interested personally as well to work on the GIS side, but it's difficult. It's going to make me go out of my way. But I believe Ethiopia have a lot of youth here that are very powerful and intellectual, And we need companies that work on mapping. A simple example that I can give you is we have to pay $5,500 annually for Google to provide us the Maps API. Probably on the southern hemisphere of Africa is the only place that this is happening. Because in most countries, the government itself have a good mapping system to find location that you don't have to pay this money. This hurts the whole economy because whenever I have to pay $5,500, this dollar is coming out of this country. So it affects the economy as well. So what I would suggest for the mapping issue is for companies that work on the map area to work very closely together. Because we found solution for us. Our solution can be a solution for Deliver Addis. But how do we share that? If me and Falega are good friends, but if you are not friends, how do we share this? So there must be a platform on how we can share knowledge on how we tackle some of the issues we face. And I see this second thing, importing best practices from abroad is something I don't agree with completely. I don't know why, but I've never agreed with this because I really believe that Ethiopia have the knowledge, the IT knowledge. For example, in ITA, we don't hire people that graduated and that have experience. We don't. If you want to work with ITA, you work from a third year of your college. We'll start paying you from there because, you see, from there, if they work with you, they know the experience on the job while they're studying. So these people know what knowledge they should focus on and then they can use in real life. So sometimes it's fascinating. I went to South Korea. I did my grad school there, and there is knowledge that I've acquired through the years, right? When I meet these young people, they know things that are way faster than I did. So trust me, I don't think we have to bring anything from abroad to this country. We don't. That's why I say, there is a quote that we say in ITA. People ask me, are you Uber? I tell them always, Uber is an American solution for the world. ITA is an Ethiopian solution for Ethiopians, right here. So I don't think we should share any best practices. How do you measure your success? I'm sure he agrees with me. Of course, not monetarily because we're not making that much money. But of course, we're making meaning. It wasn't, like I said, it was an idea 5 years ago in my bedroom. Now it's to hear a company making things, signing big contracts with big companies, and actually delivering our dream to people and people using it. I think that's how we measure our success. Thank you.
Great answers. I'll start with what you just ended on. How do we measure our success? I think the first measure is that you're still around, number one. Most entrepreneurs don't last more than a year or two. So that in and of itself is certainly an accomplishment. But also, from our perspective, are we creating value for everyone involved in this chain, right? So we have drivers that work with us. Are we creating value for the drivers? Are we creating additional opportunities for them? Like one of the best moments that I get in my job is when a driver buys his own motorbike through the money that he's made through us. And then we rent that motorbike back from him, right? And it becomes another bit of wealth creation for the driver. And that's something that's very powerful. For the restaurants themselves, these are small to medium-sized enterprises, mostly small, right? And a lot of restaurants don't last that long, but for the restaurants that do well, we see that on the bottom line. And when we have feedback from customers for them, they take that very seriously. So then we have an impact on how restaurants provide customer service, not only just to our customers that we bring to them, but also to the ones that come into the restaurant. And then on top of that, just the employees that we have working in the back office, this is something that they've never done before. A lot of the dispatchers that we have, it's almost like air traffic control. You have to juggle a number of things at any given point in time, and there's so many things that could go wrong. I mean, we've had so many incidents where, a driver's involved in an accident during a peak hour, or a driver gets a flat tire, and they handle these really, really well, and they learn on the job as well. And so it's great to see that kind of value occur at every stage of the business. And then there's a customer that gets what they want to eat at the end of the day, right? They benefit as well. So I think when we measure success, it's definitely not monetary, because if that were the case, I would probably be doing something else. But I think it comes from a sense of purpose, like he said. And so that's how we measure our success. What kinds of businesses that can help solve challenges that we have? I see HR becoming a major, major challenge very soon, especially for labor-intensive businesses. And it's challenging for diaspora to always understand, how people work here and how people think here. And this is a challenge that the industrial parks in particular are facing pretty acutely. So having a good understanding of HR and helping companies with technical founders like us who, for me, I prefer working with computers than people sometimes, right? HR is just not my forte. You can't be good at everything. And having companies that can help on that perspective from that front would be very, very beneficial. Location finding, naming. So there are companies, internationally that have come up with addressing schemes for the world. There's some called like What 3 Words or OK Hi, or these kinds of services that will name a grid of the planet. For What 3 Words, it's every 3 by 3 meters square on the planet has an address comprised of 3 distinct words. So this location could be chair.floor.camera, right? But one of the challenges with addressing in any market is education of the customer, right? So every customer that wants to use it needs to know what their location is. They need to know where they are first. And it's a very expensive and time-consuming proposition in that sense. And so it's going to be a challenge that we'll continue to face. On our website alone, you have to drop a pin where you are to get a delivery. And if you're on a phone, it'll use your GPS on your phone. But everything at the end of the day resolves to GPS coordinates. So however you can communicate those GPS coordinates effectively is how you're going to find that customer. Then on e-governance and just having the stakeholders in the room that can help solve some of our challenges, like I'd mentioned before, is just having your door open and being the liaison for us. So that when we go to these other organizations, these other public sector organizations, I don't really know how to talk to them. I've never spent that much time in the public sector. I see things from a time perspective, from an efficiency perspective, and I don't always understand the things that go into the decisions that the public sector has to make, right? And I can't say that they're doing a good job or a bad job. I can't place any judgment whatsoever because they're under pressure as well. The question is, can we have this dialogue routinely so that we can continue to communicate our evolving needs and that they can continue to communicate among their stakeholders, among other organizations, what it is that we're looking for, and hopefully we can find resolution there.
I think about the question, what you can do, when you're coming from abroad, I think it doesn't matter whether you're coming from abroad or, you're brought up here. At the end of the day, you have to start somewhere. I think the biggest thing is start somewhere, do something, and then you learn, and then start something that you're interested in, and also you have some competency in that area. And then from there, you might end up, you start doing software and might end up in doing hardware or anything else. So I think that's very difficult to say start in this specific area, but start just somewhere where you think your interest lies. About MCIT, I think it's very difficult. There's no quick fix, I guess, and you have also your processes. But I think one thing is I know you've been doing a lot of awareness creation, for instance, whenever you develop a system or, you invite different government organizations. And one thing where we are struggling is to be able to create a public-private partnerships. And you guys have been the pioneers in this area, with the Hulu services and all those things. So you have this awareness, the technology side also, working with the private sector. I think if you can help us, the private sector also, to create this awareness within other government institutions, I think that would be very useful. The other thing is, how do you define success? Like you said, being around is the first thing for sure. I think from our perspective, from the recruitment platform, the ability to find a decent paying job, at your fingertip, and also to be able to know, which skills are required in which area and all those things. I think that would kind of constitute the success, but also to have people really saying, this really has helped me to find a job, even if it's like a small number of people, that's kind of validation.
Hello? Okay. So maybe we can take one last round of questions, and as lunch is approaching, maybe we can wrap up in about 20 minutes or so. So,
Okay, thank you. I'm a high school student, as I said, let be. I'm a co-founder of the website called Soraya. I want to ask your three panels. At what stage of your app did you establish an office or headquarters, or did initially have an office, or do you have initially have an office? Thank you.
Another question? So it's kind of a question about how you figured out how to solve problems when there wasn't any internet at all. Like what kind of technologies did you use to solve that issue? Because I know that happens all the time. So.
Thank you. My question is concerning from a payment end. So I understand that everything that you, three of you have done is a bit different from what others have done before, which means you probably came across a challenge when you're talking to the revenue authority or any other regulatory offices. How did you kind of push that wall down? And has there been some sort of sustainability in terms of moving that wall, not just for yourselves, but for everyone else that kind of comes after you?
Any more questions?
Thank you. I want to ask for the second gentleman. What I wanted to ask is, how do you recruit your agents who work on the field, who give the service for your customers, and what kind of criteria do you take into consideration while you're hiring them? And my second question would be for the first delegate. What kind of responses are you expecting after you launch your products? And thank you very much.
If I may ask, who is the second question to? Tamaska. Okay, Ted. So are there any other questions? Okay, let's field these. So why don't we start with Tamaska with the last question first. And then I think So, going back, I think we have a question standing for Tamaskan. And for fun, like, how did you recruit your agents? And then maybe we'll go around to the other questions, okay?
How do you, well, we work with taxis, so taxi associations. When we started first, there were not this meter taxis, there were the Ladas, the old Ladas. So to recruit from them, we had to set high standards because there's so many ladders, and we wanted at least the door to be open and closed because most of them are very old, and you understand, right? So what we did was people that were interested in moving forward, those kind of people that we wanted. Because if the driver have an interest in gaining more jobs through technology, that's what we look for first. But after that, of course, we have criteria on the security of the car functionality, the driver's awareness on how to use cell phones, how to use cell phones while driving, meaning not actually touching his phone, but actually how to look at his cell phone from time to time to see updates. This was a key things. And after that, I'm sure there was no college of taxi driving that he went to. So we try to first we have to educate ourselves about hospitality and how to really handle customers, and then we train them. So based on this training, we give them a test. If they pass this test, they go ahead for ITA.
So, I think the question to you was, how do you recruit your agents?
Yeah. So in the beginning, that was a bit challenging because motorbike drivers don't really conform to office standards or anything like that. So what we really looked for was, first of all, eagerness to learn, right? Understanding, wanting to understand how how maps on smartphones work, how GPS works. Also from a hospitality perspective, like was mentioned, how do they present themselves in front of a customer? Because they get tips as well. So this is a good incentive for them to provide good customer service. And we help train as necessary when that happens. And then, of course, do they have a valid motorbike license, which so many don't. And so it's one of the things that we definitely have to look for. And we have to insure them as well. So if they don't have a license, then they can't join us.
Okay, so let me send one question all the way around, and maybe we start with Eskender, which is the tax question that came up. And I think when you look at pretty much any survey of how to do business in Ethiopia, and mainly even sub-Saharan Africa, there's always confusion about tax. And from our panelists here, they're setting precedent in their businesses, so there's probably even some more confusion than that. So let's ask maybe two questions to this. Number one, how do you handle the unique relationship with Arca when you first go to them and say, I am doing A, B, C, D, how do you define it, right? And then number two, and I think this marries to the prior panel we had about e-commerce. How do you handle payments? Because what you've talked about is you're taking orders online, but we really haven't talked about the other side of the e-commerce business for you and the challenge of receiving payments, with the exception of, I think Etta explained a budding relationship it has with Dashan Bank.
So I think this applies, especially the last part, more to my colleagues here. But I think one general thing is about the awareness of taxation. As a general public and as companies, we don't think we have to pay taxes. That's a very big issue. You talk to your family members, different business owners. Paying taxes is considered as like that is stifling businesses. And I hear that discussion also abroad, which I think is wrong. And the other thing is even like the tax authorities, we go there like on the 29th or in the 30s to pay our taxes. So, they have also their own pressure. They have, I think, their own limitations for sure. And for us, and I've mentioned it in different panels also, the understanding of software export, for instance, that's a huge issue, whether it's Ethiopian Revenues and Customs Authority, which says you have to do, in order to export software, you have to have it on, floppy disk, or, you have so many issues, so I don't want to go there. But for us, as a service provider, we want to collaborate with different payment providers so that we don't handle it on our own. So that's from our side.
Yeah, from a payment perspective and from a tax perspective, I would say the reason I bring up MCAT's potential role as kind of a liaison is specifically because of this, right? It's one of those things that kind of can keep me up at night as well. I think from changing it, you can't really change ERCA like the way that some of us would like, but it's easier to change yourself. So our business complies with basically behaves like any other business as much as possible. But that does limit us in some ways from growing to a level that we'd like to. And so our hope is that if we show a little bit of success here, we have enough clout to say, what if we did this differently, right? And then hopefully we have more leverage. But that wall, like you mentioned, is certainly something that I think would need to be addressed with a lot of other public sector actors, not just the private sector. How did we solve the lack of internet issues was another question. It was all text messaging. And so I remember, during one of the first internet shutdowns, like the office internet worked, but mobile data didn't work. So we could send SMSs to drivers, and they could send SMSs back, and we could receive orders online through the office. And so we communicated via SMS and had a standard template for text messaging. And we sent an email blast to all of our customers at the beginning of the day when they'd be in the office, so they'd have the email stored on their phones, because email typically syncs and is visible offline. So when they go home, they still have the email on their phones with our number to call or text. And so that was how we kept it going. And then at what stage of our service do we have an office? This is something that also needs to be addressed. I don't think the commercial code has been updated in quite some time. It's been, I think, at least since like the 1960s. But another role that MCIT can play is kind of helping the Ministry of Trade understand that to have an office when you're just doing software is not necessarily something you really need, right? You should have a way for people to contact you and to communicate with you. But how many of us send formal letters to other companies? We don't. We just go in person. And I think things have changed to the point where there's time for revision in that. But I think when we first started out, I was working. I did some IT consultancy, so I did it kind of under that for a bit. We didn't have our own company office for quite some time.
Can you hear me? Okay. If you can go to a couple of questions there. So I think it's important we can go back around to the tax question. You're running a unique business in that you have taxi drivers which you're contracted to, which are receiving the payments. So there's probably some logistics there and some gymnastics you need to do in your explanations to the Revenue Authority, Tax and Revenue Authority, number one. And number two is, if you can go to maybe a little bit of detail on the payment system you're coming into with Dashin and how this is going to simplify your transactions.
Okay, so this is the whole vision. We made a system to move for anybody at any time to get a taxi to take him whatever he wants. That means we're taking your whole body somewhere else, digitally. So I don't understand how you have to pay with cash. So it's like we're very advanced but not advanced. So that was my first fight. And people normally say, why don't you just do your business with cash? No, I'm against cash. Cash is my problem. Because we don't need cash. Why do we need it? Everything can be digitally. And I've tried multiple payment systems in Ethiopia that were available back then. And I started assisting some of them as well. And what the companies that we try to assist as well, we stack with them. And then they moved to Dashin Bank. So right now, we are working with Dashin Bank because one of our partners or companies that we develop a system with works with them. That makes it easy for us because it's a complete integration. So payment is electronically, exactly like you see it abroad. So that was a dream for us, and we've just achieved it. Actually, we're relaunching it with that on July 18th, but that was a dream come true. Now we have accomplished the transportation part, the payment part. So the biggest question comes now, how are the regulatory bodies respond to this? So I'm telling you, you can get a taxi with an app. You can pay through the app without leaving the app. How are you going to handle your taxes? This is the most difficult part because some people might want a receipt, right? We are a technology company, so we pay VAT. The taxis are transportation companies, so they pay TOT. Different taxation here. The customer wants a VAT receipt. It's a complete chaos. So what I've done is I went to ERCA, the nearest ERCA near my office. I went to the head of that ERCA and I talked to him. So I told him we could even build a system, a platform that can show you directly when payment is done, automatically you see this is how much ERCA have to get. And if they want, we can actually link the payment system directly to ERCA, so directly they can collect their tax. We even offered that in written, we even built a prototype, but there was no one listening. So we ended up, sometimes, especially in this country, you try so hard to change your country. I'm a patriot. I moved here as soon as, I didn't even wait for my graduation ceremony. I just moved here because no, it's Ita time, Ethiopian time, We have to do so much, we're youth. But some things like this really push you over. And this relates to being a startup. We're still a startup. There's nobody, for example, come to ITA, we don't have investors. No, we don't. We did it our own because we wanted to build this system. So when you have a fight here, and you have a fight with the government as well, just for simple tax, and when you provide taxation systems, that can be a solution and you're not getting accepted, that's difficult.
So, but what I've been hearing really out of all three of you, it's been very impressive, you're coming up with solutions. So you came up with a solution for a Dashin kind of mechanism.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that conformed with then at least the existent tax paradigm that you can find between the VAT and the TOT?
So what we did is we have a lot of corporate clients. So most of our companies are monthly payers. We have around 22 of the international organizations that use our cab service and some of the local hotels. So we pay them with VAT at the end of the month, regardless. Because ERCA would not accept this. We made a cashless payment system, cashless completely from my app right now. I can order a cab, pay it with that. But there was no, like we still have to send that numbered, paper-based, maybe it was an attachment to the office and ERCA have to see that. It's still a huge problem. And you cannot want to really change Ethiopia unless you do this. Because no matter what you do, it's up to the taxation system. If you don't have taxation system, that's it, you're cut. And ERCA doesn't joke, you know, if you make a foul move, it's bye-bye.
I think we captured a couple of things there, and on the tax issue, I think we heard two different sides of it, right? On one side, Iskander, who's saying ultimately you do have to pay taxes, and there is a kind of attitude, if you will, at a very high level, that from some, we don't pay taxes. We shouldn't pay taxes. So my best understanding, some just data point is, Ethiopia's tax rate is about 12% of GDP, which is one of the lowest in sub-Saharan Africa. So when you're looking at Kenya and countries like that, and I could be wrong, so I need to be corrected, but you're talking 15, 16, 17%, and you're not even talking about the more formalized sub-Saharan African economies like Ghana, which are starting to get into 16, 17%. But on the other side, what we're hearing is the system is just very complicated to people who are in the tax system and who are paying, and there needs to be some level of simplicity to acknowledge that, correct?
There's one more thing I might add to that. So what's crazy about it is we're launching a new app very soon. So this happened yesterday. So yesterday we were on a piloting on how everything works. We're launching a new e-commerce app. So we were piloting it with a Showa supermarket, right? So what happened was there was a complication in 4 of the different parts, which is huge, so unresolvable issues. Still comes with taxation. Because we will have, right now, to work with that, we will have to get a couple of receipts for the same product. So this is a really serious issue.
Okay. So I want to make sure we answer everybody's questions. There's a couple outstanding questions not everybody answered. So from your side, I think there's 2 other pieces, and we'll go to Iskander. I don't think we've addressed on some of these questions. Number one, when did you start your office? And I think that's kind of the infrastructure question we were getting is, when did you invest in this kind of brick and mortar at a basic minimum you needed? And number 2, I think we'll go through here and then come back, is where do you expect to be in about 5 years? I think that's a question we had from the last round we didn't directly address.
So when did you start an office? It depends on your business. When we started ITA, we never thought about opening a call center. Never planned. It was never in that calculation at all. We thought we will launch an app, the app will handle that, but we need a small team that 24 hours monitors that. State of emergency came when we were about to launch that. We set the place, we set everything, and no internet. So okay, we have to work somehow, so we opened a call center. Now the call center became more famous. We didn't want to do that. We wanted the app to be more famous, but people stuck with that. So what I'm asking is, what's your product? Some products don't need office. And this is a great advice that I'll tell you. Some of the biggest companies in the world, the likes of Apple, the likes of Microsoft, they worked on their garage until they made enough money to buy their next big product, meaning the next big product, their next machine. They didn't leave their garage. So unless it requires it extremely, okay, I'm going to go back to this one again. Of course, you need an office to get a license. Sorry, I have to go back to that. You can't be a startup here. Yeah, you can't get a license without an office. That's a problem. But I would advise you, if it doesn't require it, don't, because it's an extra burden on you. You have to fight being a startup. And the rent paying every month, that's a huge challenge itself. And so, really, that's my advice to you. And with ITA, You see, I started being an entrepreneur since I was 19 years old. And around 18, I started doing computer maintenance, hard drive repair and everything. And then I moved back for my grad school and I came back. So we had a small office. So when I came back, I started there, but I didn't want an office. And then when the state of emergency came, and to get a license, I had to have another office because this office had another license. So it's complicated. But we started with an office. But if you ask me, will you do it again? I would start it from my house. Truly. The second question was, oh, in 5 years. Well, in 5 years, you see, we in ITA, we're not like, people always ask me this question, are you scared of Uber or are you scared of Lyft? We were never scared of anything. Competitor makes us great, but one thing is, I'm going to quote that again, we are an Ethiopian solution for Ethiopia. So no other solution can be a solution for this country. We understand the ins and outs. And that's why we started with an Amharic app as well. Our app spoke Amharic before English. In 5 years, with the new change, with the new wave of change that we're seeing, we hope to be your chosen transportation partner. That's what we want.
A couple of questions that I think to wrap up, and then I'll give one last wrap-up question to all of you. So number one, where do you expect to be in 5 years? Number two, what's your solution when the internet goes down? And I think we heard that from both of other panelists, but how do you kind of solve for that? Because you're an ICT-based company that's entirely dependent on internet. So I think we heard texting, I think we've heard communicating directly with your drivers. How do you do that on your side? And lastly, to what extent have you built like the infrastructure? When in your business did you make that kind of investment? By infrastructure, we mean your office and things like that.
So when we started, it was about 2012 with my partner Manuel, and we were actually meeting after work, you know, in our homes or in cafes or in the weekend. So we couldn't really afford, you know, to have an office or even like time and money and all those things. And we were not sure whether we want to enter into that business. That was a very early stage. So it was once we were sure and we raised some money that we were able to have an office. And in Ethiopia anyway, you have to have an office first in order to get the license. So that was the requisition, and once you have a team and all the infrastructure, you need to set this up. But I think, like my colleague said, especially in our sector, it's really difficult. You know, you can start with just one laptop and access to internet. You should be able to start your business. So how the policy is going to address that, besides, you know, incubators and all those facilities, that remains to be seen. And the second thing is, yeah, definitely. I mean, with the internet issue, that's a huge challenge. But what I've seen is, when we started, how it was, how Ethio Telecom was providing services, and where we are now, is encouraging. I think the hope is that it's going to be better. But for sure, we're not there yet, and the internet issue, we've lost some clients, especially for the development services we've been providing. So obviously, you have your local network, which you try to do, but then once you have to interact with your clients online, then you have no other means. And for us, the decision was, you have a trade-off, right? Either you're going for the offline solution, and then you have issues with data consistency and all the other things, or yeah, so you have to cope with the internet outage. So we're more like, we're hoping that the infrastructure will be better. Where we expect to be in 5 years, I think our aim is that whenever you finish school, that the institution gives you a verified qualification, that you have taken the different courses, you have graduated from this institution, and when you are moving in your career path, that also it's confirmed by legit companies and organizations, so that you have a verified career profiling, which really enhances, especially if you're in the low and medium skilled labor. As you may know, you're required to have references በአማርኛ ተያያዥ የምንለው ነገር ማለት ነው። So it's really difficult for many people to have those, but through our system, we hope to have this verified qualifications and experiences, and upon the data, we're able to gather that both individuals and institutions should be able to make better decisions, and also we're hoping to partner with different offline or physical existing infrastructure. So to give you one example, in 2015, 845,000 people applied for DV to go to the US. And as you may know, most of them, they do it through internet cafes. You know, just pay you 20 birr, 30 birr, and this is an additional income for the internet cafes, right? So our aim is how can we leverage on such existing infrastructure because most of our people are still also offline, and there's some literacy issues.
Great. I think the only question I haven't answered is the 5 years one, right? Okay. So in 5 years from now, this is, last year I was in China with Alibaba for about 3 weeks, and one thing that really stuck was the idea of platforms, right? So currently, we do e-commerce and logistics, but at some point it might be worthwhile to focus on one, right? And the question becomes, how can we enable other companies to leverage the logistics system we've built up, the cash collection system that we've built up for ourselves, and start almost moving out of B2C at some point and looking at how can we enable other young entrepreneurs to focus on their businesses, right? Because there are going to be some young entrepreneurs that are great at marketing, absolute great at marketing, but they may not have the logistics component. And so if we can solve that challenge first, then that's a service we can provide. We've already started doing this. So our intention is to look at things more from a platform perspective and enabling other companies more so than just trying to do everything ourselves. Because if you try to do everything yourself, most likely you can't do everything well. And so at some point we'll focus on one of those things, and that's ideally where I would like to be in 5 years.
So maybe let me give some final questions to all three of you, and then I'll make some final comments. So first, we'll start with Tamaskan. First, this is an ICT conference. While your businesses, and I think Fadla captured it nicely, encompass logistics, encompass job services, encompass different things. But since it's an ICT conference, can you discuss a little bit about, not within the framework of things that have been discussed here, but more broadly, what is your number one challenge when you're thinking about, whoa, this could be a really big problem for me in the next 2, 3, 4 years, right? So that's number one. What's the thing that keeps you awake at night that we haven't talked about already? So number two is, I guess it's a little bit unfair, but it is said, if you can't teach. Well, you guys are doing it, you're doing very well. So if you could give one piece of advice to a lot of people here, what would it be?
Okay, so some of the problems that keeps me awake at night, like you said, are, you see, we have Ict Solutions PLC is a technology company, and we have multiple technologies that we want to bring to our country that we already built, and we want to release here. Some of our worries are, for example, right now, some of our biggest cost is, like I said, the Google Maps API cost, the hosting cost. We need someone that hosts our system here that is guaranteed and well-serving. And of course, international companies entering similar business that we have. That is a question, a huge question. If we see the experience of Korea, for example, blocked all international companies before entering their country when they were establishing when local companies were emerging. So when local companies they wanted the locals to emerge first so that they have a chance to fight, a fair fight. That is a very serious issue here, because if Uber comes or whatever comes, we will be still fighting with similar problems. And some of the things that we really, really need, of course, is the taxation system, and the hosting platforms should be built for us here. That is a serious issue that we have to think.
But and if we can keep it brief, so we just...
Sure. So I think the number one challenge that I'm looking at, especially when it comes to scaling a business, is going to be the HR challenges, which I touched upon earlier. It's quite challenging to grow a business, but when you have to do it quickly, it becomes exponentially harder. So when you're hiring more and more people, more and more frequently, you still have to find ways to effectively communicate your mission and your values to them in a way that where they can maintain the service level that you intend to provide. That's a big one. And you also touched upon if you can't do teach. Like when I first moved, I had mentors here that had made this move before me. And before I moved, I was emailing them frequently, asking questions about what can I expect, what are some things I should look out for. And so now I'm in a position where I can mentor others, and I have, and I still do. And so it's really a matter of kind of keeping that chain going, paying it forward, basically. And those mentors that I had before, I'm at the position now where they were when I first met them, right? And so it's interesting to see that progression. And for me, like as a young mentor now, for others, my hope is that they also they kind of come up in a similar vein as I did. And so that's something that I think is really important, that all of us that have experienced any level of success should look at doing as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Father.
So we have many challenges, I guess, but I think as a recruitment or job service provider, the biggest thing is we need peace. That people should be able to move to different regions and be able to work there without any issues. So I think that's more a broader, not specific to us, I guess. My advice would be along the lines of what Felix said. I think the first thing is that, like I said, you need to start something, doing something, and then along the line you need to learn and improve, and then collaborate, with other institutions, organizations, and individuals.
Okay. On that note, let us close with just a few very brief remarks. So I think what we heard today is 3-4 very important themes that you just keep hearing over and over again. So these are entrepreneurs. There's problems, there's challenges, but they're just coming up with solutions. They're working around those challenges, and I think that's something we've seen consistently in successful entrepreneurs in Ethiopia. Number 2 is just a passion for their business. They know their business inside and out, but they want to succeed. When they were asked how you measure success, none of them said money. They are passionate about the space they work in, and I think that's something you always hear about entrepreneurship, is find something you love. And lastly is, I think, there is a dependency and a partnership and an eagerness to work with public sector. And I think they've all expressed it's been remarkable growth in the kind of infrastructure that's here, but there needs to be substantially more to scale up their businesses. So I think that's a good final step to leave it on, and we'll catch up next year and see where you are with that. Thank you, everybody, very much.